All right, cool. So welcome everyone to the CRM live Q&A call. And I really want to make sure that this is an interactive experience. And I wanted to give some context here before we got started. This is really something that I have been working on for the last 12 years and through a lot of ups and downs and through a lot of challenges. And so, my background, I want to give a little background. Most of you have an idea of my background, but I just felt like that was a good place for us to start. I spent over almost 15 years in the advertising sales world. After that, I then ended up going into coaching, and I did some coaching for Tony Robbins. And I ended up working with, over 300 different one-on-one entrepreneurs all over the globe. I mean, from Australia to London, to all over the States and Canada. And so I saw a lot of consistent, repeatable challenges that they all had. And along the way, I was working on my own systems and process of follow-up and process. And that's really what's led me into this whole idea of what the CRM is about and how I can really serve a lot of individuals with this. So many times people just see these amazing demos that CRMs have an opportunity to show, and they all have amazing, robust qualities. If you don't know exactly what you want it to do, you're going to get caught up in just trying to apply it without really architecting it. And so the way that I like to talk about this is 4 stages: capture, apply, refine, and then automate. And most people end up looking at automation first, but then they end up trying to go backwards and reverse engineer and then try and clean up all their data. So what we're going to talk about today are some strategies for you to be able to organize deal flow, because that was the biggest one that everyone wanted to talk about. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I have some tools and strategies that you guys can utilize, including some links that I'll send out afterwards if you'd like. I also have a worksheet as well on being able to start to organize this, because the biggest thing is capturing what you want it to do first, then apply it, then refine it, and then automate and put that into your CRM. So that's kind of a little bit more of the context. If anyone of you that's on the call wants to set up a separate call and we could go through individual questions, I'm more than happy to do that. Again, I geek out over talking about this stuff. And I'm just grateful for you guys all to be here. And this is something that, this is the first time that I'm doing this. So I really am open to feedback as well on what's going to serve you best. So that being said, as I mentioned, there were a number of things that I asked inside of that questionnaire or survey, as what do you want to learn? And deal flow was one of them. Organizing content was another, and organizing our leads. So specifically for those that wanted to talk a little bit about deal flow, because that seemed to be the most important one, what is it specifically that you would like to talk about or have questions on that I could really kind of navigate through? Again, I have some things that I'm happy to talk about, but at the same time, I wanted to kind of get maybe some more context of what that looks like for you. So whoever wants to raise their hand or add it in the chat. Okay, Salesforce in your dealer work. Okay. Brett, you look like you came off of mute. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm trying to figure out the organizing content and organizing leads piece.
Oh, okay.
I don't really know, maybe understand. So like deal flow, I'm guessing that's more like ClickFunnels type stuff, or
it can be. When we start talking about deal flow, like what I like to look at is I refer to something called like the sales question ladder. And as you go about your process, is everyone here in a B2B role, or is there anyone business to business or business to consumer? I don't think we have anyone on here that's business to consumer, right? Okay, so we're all B2B. Oh, you're business to consumer, Michael? Okay, gotcha. All right. Well, the thing about it is when we have B2B, there's typically a lot more stages than a B2C process. Well, B2C, you're going to have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 steps maybe, versus a B2B might have 5 or 6, where you might have a form that someone fills out, and then there's an initial meeting, and then there's the follow-up, like presentation, and then some of the adjustments that need to take place after that presentation and the follow-up. So the biggest thing there is really just kind of articulating how do those questions need to line up in order for you to continue to keep advancing that process. And one of the biggest things I talk about in that deal flow is what are the qualifying questions you have and what are the disqualifying questions? Because you want to qualify as quickly as possible and you want to disqualify as quickly as possible. Because the more time you're spending with someone that isn't a potential prospect, like an ideal client for them or you know, you're saving them time and they're saving you time, right? So that's really the idea of kind of the context between the deal flow. So I kind of looked at as the different stages of, you know, someone fills out a form. You know, they see an ad, they fill out a form on your website, they set up a meeting with you. You have that initial meeting and you have questions you need to ask. Then there's a follow-up, right? So that's kind of more along the lines of what the deal flow is, though. So I just wanted to give some context. Does that all make sense to everyone? Okay, great. So on the leads side, I think one of the most important things that you could do inside of understanding and really beginning to organize your leads is to do some ideal persona development. And let me explain what that means. So like when I create something called the persona power of 3. Years ago, I heard the phrase, most people think in terms of 1, 2, 3, many. So anything beyond 3, it starts getting very overwhelming very quickly. So inside of this persona power of 3, there's 3 real areas of how you can clarify and identify who your customer is. I was talking with a prospect a couple of weeks ago, and as I was explaining this process to them, you know, they were looking at their list as, you know, they had 100 different names in there, so to speak. And they were almost looking at every single one of those people individually. And I said, well, actually, what you really want to look at is think about them as personas. So those 100 people might be broken into 3 different categories or 4 different categories, but they have the persona power of 3 has 3 main areas: the challenges, the characteristics, and the goals of that particular person. So what you start doing then is you start seeing, instead of these 100 people, you see 4. You see Tim, you see Sally, you see Jane. And so what you could start to do is Jane is at a different level in her business, and she has different needs and requirements than a Tim. And so what you can do inside of your content, so these 2 things really relate really, really well. The more you're able to understand those challenges, characteristics, and goals, the better you're going to be able to articulate content that's going to serve them. You know, when I look at the challenges that I'm talking to, there's a lot of the challenges that my customer or my ideal persona is challenged with are like they have AEs that they've hired, account executives, salespeople that they've hired that haven't worked out. You know, they've put them on for 6 months, but then it's like they don't, there's no process, so they don't know exactly how to do that. So what I'm able to do when I'm developing this is I could talk to that persona about, hey, if you're struggling to keep some of your AEs, or if you're struggling with training those AEs, here are some things that you can do in order for that AE to continue to grow and work with you, and you could train them doing these steps, right? So those 2 things kind of work hand in hand, and that persona work is something that I think is, I heard it years ago, and I've continued to give kudos to Joe Polish and Dean Jackson at I Love Marketing. They've got this breakthrough DNA report, and it's select a single target market one at a time. And so my invitation to you is to take a look at, you know, if you were to look at your current list and those clients that you really love working with, right? That end up, you know, really can use your services and they end up consistently coming back. Start to take a look at those and what are some of the characteristics of them? Like, where are they in their business? And even some of their hobbies, some of their interests. I mean, that's a little bit more nuanced. But if you know that someone, you know, I'm in Central Oregon. I live in Bend, and you know, I feel like there's a number of people, you know, in a couple different areas here. I'm an outdoors guy, right? So maybe that's a characteristic of that. I'm a skier. I'm a mountain biker. this particular character, if you're going to call Tim the outdoors person, you don't have to necessarily say he's into fishing or he's into this. He could be an outdoor guy, but then you could start to make sure that even some of the imagery and some of the content, you're almost alluding to that inside of it. Like, hey, if you want to get outside and be more in nature, like those are some of the things that are very nuanced, but it also helps for Tim to feel understood. Because the most important thing that I feel is missing inside of a lot of marketing is without doing this work is that articulation of them feeling understood. People want to feel understood. So many people are talking these days at people as opposed to listening, understanding. Again, another phrase that I heard years ago is connect, understand, and appreciate someone's world. When you connect, understand, and appreciate someone's world inside of this persona clarification, understanding their challenges, understanding their characteristics and understanding their goals, you could really create content that's going to serve them because you're thinking about them specifically. You're thinking about Tim specifically. So, again, I know there's a lot of context in there and content. Does that help out?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then kind of taking that one step further, like organizing leads inside of a CRM, it could start out in a spreadsheet. I think, there was a comment that I made that most people are using their CRM like a glorified spreadsheet. You can begin to look at certain columns and certain strategies that make sense based off of who your list is. So you could take that list of 100 names, and then you could start to parse out how many of these are Tim's, like in just one of the columns, and export your list, and then start to put persona work to each one of those. So now all of a sudden you could pull out, okay, I've got to send an email to Tim's because Tim is looking to accomplish this particular goal. And I'm going to give you one example, and then I want to make sure I can answer some other questions here. There was a time in an agency that I worked at where I was very specific about going after this education vertical. And it was broken into colleges and then trade schools. And on one particular occasion, because I did this work and because I was very clear on, okay, not only education, but what's the differences between colleges and universities and trade schools? Well, there was an example of Mike Rowe was on Good Morning America talking about the power of trade schools. So what I did was I pulled up because I had organized my persona work and I knew that in this industry that was all about trade schools, and I had about 40 some people that were regularly interacting with emails that I was sending out. And I found this YouTube of Mike Rowe on Good Morning America, and I sent out a specific email. I pulled out every single one of those people inside of the trade school, and I said, hey, and the contact that I was talking to was more the admissions director, the person that was kind of in handling it, but he also had a challenge with some of the admissions directors where their team was not necessarily, they had a lot of their customers that were kind of on the fence. So I sent over an email to them saying, hey, I just found this article or just found this video that I thought you could forward on to your admissions team for any one of their prospects that might be on the fence. Here's something that's completely third party that would be valuable for them to get. And so I sent that email out to all of them, basically because I was adding value to what they needed and what I heard their challenges were. Because as they were talking with their admissions team was struggling with some of those leads being on the fence. So this was just one way. I'm like, hey, for any one of you, like just forward this on to them and they could forward this on to their client, because this is just a YouTube link that they could say, hey, look, we're talking about it, but here's also someone on Good Morning America talking about this. So again, it starts to help you organize and find relevant content in a very concise manner that's going to serve a Tim. Okay, so that's it. All right, what other questions we have here?
Hey Mark, you said you have like an example that you talk about, you can put things in a spreadsheet before you throw them on your CRM, right? Do you have an example of some of those tabs that maybe you would recommend us using?
Yeah. Let me pull that up. I don't have that.
Like you can send it, right, or however you want to do it, but you don't have to bring it up now if you can't get it. But just something I was thinking about.
Yeah, no, it's great. And it's totally it's a really great question. And what I'll do is I'll send over a couple of the columns that I think are the most important ones.
Great.
One of which is industry. I'll just kind of talk through it a little bit right now, and then I could send it out. But one of them is industry. Like, what industries are you working with? Who is that persona, right? Like, I think it's really important. And the thing about it is you could get really overly complicated very quickly. So my goal, or my recommendation, is to do between 3 and 5 personas. I think any more than that, you start getting really overwhelmed, because it's like, oh, well, this person's kind of like this, but they're kind of not. But the idea is, are you able to speak to them in a specific enough way? So the way that I've identified even my product side is, I have a product that and my persona is Michael Marketer, and basically he has 3 different stages. So he's either building, growing, or scaling. And so within that, the building Michael has a certain thing that he's trying to figure out enough things that he can begin to find someone to hire, but it's mainly him, right? And so, like, those are the types of things that the more clear you get, the more aligned you can even begin to align your product offering to what they need, because you're very clear on what those challenges are. Okay. And so again, there could be some other things in terms of even revenue, employee size, because, years ago, and, it was one of those things that my goal was, I wanted to help and I wanted to serve as many people as I possibly could. And so anyone that was like, hey, I need some help, I'm like, great, let me help you. Right. And what I found, though, is there was a lot of people that were starting up, and we would start working on these systems or these processes. And then 6 months later, they're like, oh, well, I decided to go this way now. And I'm like, well, you just threw out everything that we just worked on, right? And so I'm at a place now where when someone's starting something up, I'm like, it's not that I don't want to help them. It's the same time, like, they're still trying to throw enough spaghetti against the wall that I know with the product of like what I'm offering, it's further down the line after they've established a product market fit. Right. So it's really like that building, Michael, has established a product market fit that then could be applied into the other areas. Right. And so, like, each one of those, there's a stair step, and that's where it kind of advances and progresses. So I know I'm kind of going back to, like, and I'm just going to kind of share this one piece. I don't want to underestimate or underemphasize that power of persona. And it's something, again, that I've really, really connected to. Years ago, I don't know how many of you follow, sports. I'm not a huge sports guy. At the same time, I use a lot of sports analogies. And I have always appreciated who John Wooden is. And I don't know if anyone or everyone knows who John Wooden is, but John Wooden was an NCAA coach. If you type in John Wooden, you're going to see, like, he's like almost like acclaimed as one of the greatest coaches out there. And again, I'm relating this back to why I'm mentioning and kind of harping so much on this persona, even though we're trying to talk about CRM, but, like, why are you talking so much about this? Well, when you go to John Wooden would say, and he won 10 out of 12 championships when he was coaching. And the first day of practice, he had his players take their socks and shoes off. And he said, I want to teach you how to put your socks on right. I want to teach you how to lace up your sneakers. Because he said, when you put your socks on right, when you lace up your sneakers, you're not going to miss practice, you're not going to get blisters, and we're going to win championships. He focused on the little details, and that helped advance all of the other details. And so, like, to me, this persona work is the socks and shoes. It might not feel like, oh yeah, we're not making progress, but think about it. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, there's capture, apply, refine, automate. We're capturing now. And if you have some of this already, how can you apply this to some of your existing list? And the best thing that you could do is to do any of this organization outside of your CRM. So many of my clients, like, I was talking with a client, and he's like, why are we doing all this outside of our CRM? Like, shouldn't we be doing? I'm like, when we have it outside, right? When you export the list, you can actually clean it up and you can actually see it as a whole, as opposed to, well, you've got to click on this record, you got to go into this detail. Oh, is that information there? So this this spreadsheet that I'm talking about and some of these columns that I'm talking about allow you to start to see what is really important. Do you need a LinkedIn profile or not? Like, because if you don't need a LinkedIn profile, then don't take it or don't leave it in there. But if LinkedIn profile is that's where you're going to get more of your marketing leads, then make sure you have a LinkedIn column and make sure that you have every single one of those 100 names has a LinkedIn name or has a LinkedIn contact. And that's the sort of thing where I invite like the customization of it all. A phrase that I often say is, what gives the oak its strength is its power to be flexible. And so the columns and the spreadsheets are going to be custom tailored to you and like what you need and how you're marketing and who you're serving. So, you know, allowing yourself to say, yeah, you know what, I really don't need this LinkedIn, or yeah, I do a lot of posts on LinkedIn. So I want to make sure that I have everyone's LinkedIn profile. Because, you know, I think a big thing about making sure you have this contact information is because when you have this information, it's readily available. And when you want to pull it in, you can see it. You can see all the unnecessary information. So by doing these spreadsheets, the spreadsheet and these columns, you can start to identify. And again, a big suggestion that I have is after you export this, pick out like 5 or 10 of your best customers and say like, what things out of all these columns that Mark shared, what are the most important things that I need? And go through each one of those line by line. This is slowing down to go fast, right? I just did a post on LinkedIn the other day, and I've been watching the Formula One series, Drive to Survive, and I just love Formula One. I love just what they do in those cars. It's amazing. Those cars are so aerodynamically sound that they could actually drive on the ceiling. Anyhow, before any of those guys start to drive at 230, 40, 50 miles an hour, they walk the track. They walk the track so they could see the bumps. They could see the things that they're not going to be able to see at 250 miles an hour, 230 miles an hour. All right. So that's kind of the idea of what we're talking about inside of this is, what do we need to do inside of these spreadsheets that what are the columns? And again, I'm happy to send out all those, some of the columns that you could use that will help you organize that. Great. What other questions?
Thanks, Mark. So far, this has been pretty helpful. So
Awesome.
appreciate it.
Good. Well, that's the whole idea. I want to make sure, like I said, this is I want to be kind of live, and whatever you guys need.
I didn't even know what I needed to know. You know what I mean? Like I just hopped on here, not really knowing fully.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the tidbits.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. And like I said, it's just when you start doing this, when you start looking at the most important things for your clients, it's like, okay, well, you can even start to identify what are those challenges, right? You can, and you're going to start off with the big amount. Like I brought it down to challenges, characteristics, and goals, but I had tried a lot of different things first. But I'm like, well, this actually kind of all relates into challenges. This kind of all relates into, you know, goals. This all kind of relates into characteristics. And so I was able to like, okay, that makes sense to me. And I tried it, you know, I applied it, and then I refined it. So I took maybe like 5 or 6 different categories and I broke it down into the 3. And that's what I'm really inviting you to do here, is to really be able to do that and pick your best customers, because you know them the best, right? They're either spending enough money with you, they're regularly repeating, or whatever those things are, and use that as your category of like, man, I really like like if you were to slow down and think about what are the most important things you need to know about that person. So like, for instance, you want to send them a birthday card, right? Do you have their birthday information? Is that a column that you need because you regularly want to have that, right? What are the most important things that you need to have, thinking about how you currently operate or how you'd like to operate? You know, this could be current based. This could also be future based. You know, what are the things that you're maybe not doing? Well, hey, you know what? You don't have birthdays of all of your clients. So you know what? Maybe that's the next thing you start doing, is you have this spreadsheet and you start capturing everyone's birthday. Like, how cool would it be to send out an email to all of your best customers and say, hey, I'd like to know your birthday? Or you could do a query, you know, and have like run a birthday query on that. I'm sure you could probably find that out somehow on Facebook, but you know, like, what are the most important things that are gonna help you differentiate? And again, this is about developing a relationship. This isn't about, you know, the spray and pray, right? Like this is about really articulating things that you can serve your client with versus just trying to sell them something. You know, I'm just like there was a client or a referral a friend of mine sent me. This is about a year or so ago, and I remember I was like, look, I'm having this meeting because I really appreciate my friend Monica. I love my friend Monica, and you know, I want to help you based off of how I saw you answer the question. You're going to need to sell me on trying to help you. Like, no, you're gonna have to sell me on saying like, let's work together. Because where you're at, it was a startup, right? And it was like, I'm going to help you as much as I can today, but you're not in the most ideal place for me to be able to serve you long term because you're going to spend all this money and then you're going to throw it all away because I've seen it happen too many times. So I didn't want to work with him. Just you know, but I wanted to help him on that call. So again, it just like helped me clarify what are the most important things. And so that's a big thing, like in using existing clients that you really love working with, right? Because this is really ideal personas. Like, how can you make sure that you're working with the ideal personas? Because we all have had the clients that we've worked with where like, oh my gosh, like you want to help them. You know that you know what you're doing, and it's just not working because of the characteristics aren't aligned, the challenges aren't aligned, or the goals aren't aligned, or all three of those are not aligned, right? So the more you're able to do that, the better. So we have 2 minutes left. Again, I'm happy to go over a little bit longer, but this is something that I'm going to just do I'm going to do a quick screen share here. This is actually a worksheet that I'm happy to send out to you guys for you to take a look at. And there's sources, like what are 3 to 5 sources of who and how do you reach out? Is it events? Are there referrals? Right? Are you doing certain type of like an ad campaign? Are you doing Google ads or Facebook? Here's the persona, right? I mentioned, you know, the top 3 here. So that way you could send specific information to specific personas. The next thing is life cycle stage. Like, where are they in the overall journey? This kind of goes back to the deal flow piece, because there's certain people that you might identify as a prospect, right? And they're like, man, this would be really great. I really got my teeth cut in on HubSpot. So one of the life cycle stages that they say is sales qualified lead. You might have a sales qualified lead, or you might have an opportunity. An opportunity might be a meeting. Sales qualified lead might be that person where you're like, yeah, I'd really like to meet with them, but you don't have a meeting with them yet. So start categorizing like how you want to look at that life cycle stage and where they fall, because you might have people that you're just trying to talk to and get a meeting, and then there's also people that you've had meetings with that you need to continue to follow up with. So there's a delineation there. There's a differentiation of what information you need to send to someone you've never met with versus someone that you've met with, and what is that information you need to follow up with. Lead status, kind of like where do they fall within those life cycle stages? And again, I'm getting a little bit more into some of the weeds here, but and then even some of the filters, like what are the filters that you would want to be able to do? Like I mentioned that trade school example. Well, I was able to pull out that industry because I'm like, hey, I was identifying, yeah, this would be great for trade schools. So that filter was, I was able to pull up all of the trade schools that I needed to, so I could easily send them something of value, right? So again, I'm happy to send out this worksheet, which I think will be really helpful. And this kind of goes along with a lot of the things that we were just talking about. So, you know, that being said, I'm more than happy to stick around. For those that need to hop, feel free to hop. But you know, are there any other questions? Again, I'm more than happy. I had I had scheduled an hour, so I know I told you 30 minutes, and you know, I'm happy to continue to go because, as you can see, I'm a little bit passionate about this because really, at the end of the day, this is about building a relationship, and I am really focused on serving people that I know that I can truly serve, right? And you guys all took the time out of your day to be here to look at this. And so I want to honor all of you for being here, asking questions, being present, and taking notes, whatever that might look like for all of you, and just being able to like look at that takeaway. So, you know, again, happy to answer any other questions you have. or I'd love to hear like a takeaway or two that's really been able to, like, you can instantly apply, because I also don't want this to just sit on the shelf. Like, what can you take from today and begin to instantly apply because of X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, Mark, I mean, again, I didn't know what I was really coming into, right? Based, I mean, I know, what you do and I know how you do it. And that's
Yeah,
why I'm here because,
yeah, thanks.
you're great at it. But, some of the things I got, just some reiterations of things that I need to hear, right? As far as how we communicate the different personas that you can identify, and then how to really act on that. Even, the birthday card thing, right? Like that's something that when people do it to me, it's like, hey, you remembered, right? And those people stand out. And so, to your point, it's a relationship building, activity, and it's one that is very memorable for people, right? They remember when you remember them. So I thought that was great. And just in general, I got some good ideas as far as, challenges, characteristics, goals, that type of thing. Just being mindful of them. I think in our day to day, and I don't know the other guys on this call, I don't know what line of work that they're in, but it's things happen, right? And even today I've already been thrown off course, right? Just with different things, and we've talked about that, right? Having a calendar, a schedule, set some times aside to be more productive in those things that you're not being productive in. And again, it's just good for me to hear some of these things. I appreciate that list that you had. If you could send that out. I don't know if you've sent that to me before, but even the calendar that you've sent me in the past, I've used, and it's helpful. But again, sometimes we get stuck in the weeds, or we just, our groove becomes a rut, and then we're just kind of moving along, and we need to be reminded to sometimes change course. So thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Yeah, awesome. Sounds good. Anyone else?
Do you have any feedback as far as selecting or working with specific CRM?
Oh, that's a great question. Great question. I think, what you really are going to need to think about is there's some major player, like, it's how much involvement do you want it to do in terms of follow-up? So, like, I'm going to use like Salesforce. To me, I had a client that I was working with like a number of years ago, and he had another salesperson. So it was him and a salesperson, and they had Salesforce. And anything that he wanted to do, he had to hire a Salesforce person to work on, right? It was major. Like, it's a behemoth. Like,
It
Salesforce
is.
is major for for enterprise. So, like, there's a need and there's a reason for why Salesforce exists. And this is not a knock on Salesforce at all. It's just like, what exactly do you need? And so, like, do you need all that, or do you just need the robustness of like a marketing arm of like a lead magnet, right? So, like, if someone's going to come onto your site, there are some more expensive options that you can do. Like, again, I used HubSpot in the past. HubSpot has been adjusting a little bit. They're not at the Salesforce level, but they're a little bit more advanced. I mean, if you want to do a marketing and you want to do a sales piece, if you've got a number of sales team members, I mean, you're looking at $1,000 a month at a minimum to do the sales arm and the marketing arm. So, like, it's, where is your budget? So, like, then you can kind of take a step down. There's Active Campaign. That's what I use. And again, I'm like, I don't have an affiliate or anything with Active Campaign or any of that stuff. So I'm just kind of sharing that with you. But like, Active Campaign allows me to do marketing elements and sales elements of sales sequencing in a way. I can use tagging structure and all of those things. So I think it matters of like, how do you want to engage sales and marketing? I think that's the big thing. If it's really a sales outreach and you don't necessarily need to use it as much on the marketing side, I mean, you could probably go with a HubSpot, maybe, because you're only needing to use one of the arms. But if you want to use both of the arms and you're looking at how do you kind of budget appropriately, again, like, for me, it's me as the salesperson, right? Now, again, I'm looking at advancing and growing. At the same time, like, I've got it set up in a way where it makes sense for me to spend $100 a month on Active Campaign for me to be able to do what I needed to do. And then there's also like more simplified versions. I mean, there is a free version of HubSpot. There's a free version of a lot of things, but it's like, what are you using it for? So, like, I love the follow-up. And so I want to make sure that when I have something happen, so like I've got I operate in my active campaign two different businesses. Like I've got my consulting business and I've got my art business. And when someone uh, purchases an event that I do in my art business, as soon as they do that, they get added into a deal flow. And then there's also an email that they get like, hey, this is what you can expect. This is the agenda for the evening and so on and so forth. All of that is like automatically added in. And I don't have to think about it. Like, whereas before, like someone would sign up, I'd have to send an email and all that. So like that was really robust because it's even tied in with my, like it's a Zapier integration. And I know I'm getting a little bit further down into the weeds. But, you know, on my consulting side, like I also have follows where there's a certain individual that I'll start working with, and I want to continue to follow up with them because they haven't necessarily identified the need right now, but they're like, yeah, I'm interested in what you have to offer. So I have some different campaigns that I've put together where I'll set up a tag. And in some cases, I've shared with you a little bit of behind the scenes. And for those of you who want to kind of hop into one of those meetings, I'm more than happy to do that, where I'll literally kind of like lift the hood of like, hey, I'm going to send you this right now. And there's been some times where it's like it's kind of fun because people literally see I'm like, well, this I'm gonna give it a tag right now, and you're gonna get this email. And I was on a call with one of my clients, and I sent him a tag. I showed him on the back end, and like a minute later, he's like, oh, I just got the email. I'm like, yeah, that's how it works, you know. So again, it's really identifying how do you want to communicate? What is it really about? Is this a engagement, like to make sure that you're continuing to advance the sales? Is this a recurring, you know, you want to just kind of keep your information out there in front of everyone? Or is this a thank you, like or an upsell opportunity, you know? And so again, it's how are you using sales and marketing inside of it to really help you identify it. And again, I'm happy to chat more about some of those other things. I've used Keep. I've had some clients that actually use Pipedrive. Again, Pipedrive is more on the deal flow side of things. Mailchimp. You know, there's a lot of different things out there. It's just, do you want an all-in-one, or do you want to like have to do some Mailchimp over here and use Pipedrive over here and do this? Like it starts getting a little convoluted, and you start losing a little bit of the simplification that I'm really inviting everyone to do. When you export that list and create it in a spreadsheet, you're able to see everything that you needed to see in one sheet, as opposed to, well, I've got some information over here that works. I've got some information over here that works. And that's where it starts to get really clunky really quickly. So it is worth investing in something. And again, I'm not saying you got to go anything super, super extreme. Like I ended up adding in the marketing tier inside of Active Campaign, but I didn't start off with that because I'm like, well, I wasn't sure I was going to be needing lead magnets. But if you go on, I've got one here, and let me just see this. I have that set up. Oh yeah, so I'll share the screen as well. So this is actually I have a mind map that you could download. So if you download this, you'll instantly get, you know, this is kind of like how you map out your sales process. You define, document, and track it. But you just put your name and email in here, and this is actually a downloadable option for you right now. And like I decided that I was going to start doing more of these lead magnets like this for me to be able to send this out. Like if I'm talking to someone, hey, here's a way for you to organize, and a real simple way to do that without them having to really do a whole lot of extra work or talk with me, but like it could start to give them a little bit of an idea of what that could look like. So I know that was a very long answer to a short question, but hopefully that helps.
No, that's good.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I think it's good information. We use Constant Contact.
Yeah.
Currently, more just for like the email piece. But you know, I mean, it seems like with everything there's limitations, you know. So
yeah,
just kind of thinking through sort of how the future would look and what we're wanting to do, you know. I go, I don't know if that's gonna work, you know.
Yeah. Well, and it's perfect though, because let me also I have one other doc that I could share with you, but this is another one. So I was mentioning about the capture, apply, refine, automate. Like you starting to think about this, you starting to see Constant Contact is working right now, but like, okay, so you're sending out a newsletter. Okay, that works for that. I want to start sending out more information that's value about my industry and to existing customers that are regular customers of mine. And I want to let them know, oh, well, we just added this other thing. Did you know that? Right? Like, I know you just had a wonderful event the other day, and like, hey, here's some cool things. Like, it was really cool for me to be able to see the things that you guys are able to help serve me with, right? Because I'm like, I just kind of see it's like it's behind the curtain, so to speak. Not that your company is like that at all, but it was like, you know, most people want to just come in and like, okay, yeah, here's here's what I ordered, you know, and I've got it. So thank you. And so yeah, for those, Brett has an amazing print company here in Bend and just does an amazing job. And yeah, so that just a nice little plug for Premier Print.
Thanks, Mark.
And so, you know, again, it's like now you might need to refine it, right? You don't have to throw out Constant Contact right now, but like, well, what do you want it to do, right? This starts to come back to what's the goal? And that's why I wanted to even start off this, like, with what is the most important thing inside of your CRM that you want to do? Well, hey, I want to start sending out more information that's relevant to specific people. Well, again, let's get really clear on who those people are that you're going to send. These are regular, I mean, you could even have it as, you know, regular buyers or intermittent buyers. I mean, it doesn't even have to be dollar-wise. It could even be the frequency of purchase. You know, so there's so many different ways you could slice this, but when you start thinking about it and you start doing these thinking exercises, you start understanding how do you want it to work? Because, you know, again, for someone who's just going to hop into like a CRM, because like these demos look amazing, like they're incredible, because it's like, oh, I want that to do that, I want to do that, but you've never done that, and it's you're gonna get it, and it's gonna be a blank canvas because it's like, hey, there's so much robustness to it, and then like, now what? Like, what do you do? It was funny years ago, Infusionsoft. So I used Infusionsoft years ago. It's now turned into Keep. But they were doing this new kind of version. It was a small business piece. And at the time, I was actually using HubSpot. And I went to one of their conferences. And after seeing what they were doing, I'm like, you know what, guys? I'm like, if you guys follow through with this, and I was talking to the engineer over at Keep after he spoke on stage about like what they were launching. And I said, if you guys can focus on this like small and narrow path of like, here's what you can do in this, like, and not focus on, because when I got Infusionsoft, it was like, what do you want it to do? I'm like, I don't even know, right? And it was like, you want to go here? Well, you could go there. You could mountain bike here. You could go there. You could go. You could take a kayak there. You could pedal up there. You can take a car up there. You could take a train. It's like, which way do you want to go? Well, I'm like, well, how can you just give me the directions to go and what exit I need to take? And that was what I told him. I'm like, you could really grow this if you just focused on giving people a simple path to get there. And sometimes some of these robust platforms can do so many different things, but there's too many things that they could do. So that's what I really liked about HubSpot. That's where the life cycle stage, the lead status, I'm like, I'm going to focus on persona. I'm going to focus on life cycle stage. I'm going to focus on lead status. And I want to know, who am I talking to? And where are they? Have I had a meeting with them, or have I not had a meeting with them? And like, it really almost is kind of as simple as that. It helped me to organize, okay, now I have that. What information and what content can I send them? Like, if I haven't had a meeting with them, what information could I send them that could get me a meeting? If I've had a meeting with them, what information could I, like, I have a opportunities gone cold sequence. Because it's like, hey, someone I talked to, they were all interested, and then it's kind of like they just went cold. Because things happen, right? I mean, people have things that come up, right? So like, what is that information that could like almost resume the conversation that we were having, that they connected to, that could still add value to them? And so that was another piece that I created, was like this piece that, hey, we've already talked, so I don't need to explain myself again, but here's some things that you could look at.
Good information, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right. Anything else, or we can
still need to do my follow-up from our event last week.
Oh, you know, I'm glad you even mentioned that too, because one of the other things about this is I heard this and one thing you've heard me talk about Dean Jackson and Joe Polish from I Love Marketing. One thing that Dean Jackson always said was think like a chess master. And the thing that I really and what I appreciate about Joe specifically is that, you know, Joe is always adding value to people. And it's really to add value. And it's not I mean, yeah, obviously he has products and things that he could sell, but at the same time, it's not like that. I'm giving you this and here's a hook, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I like the idea of thinking like a chess master and thinking about what do you need to do outside of the next step. So if you're going to do something like I was so excited to share that email of me sending the email to you after you replied, right? Like that was me thinking about, well, okay, I'm going to anticipate people are going to want to come on this call. So what do I need to think about next and have that? And again, this is not like any like, oh crap, man, because you're already like, this is not anything other than just simply kind of as we're developing these processes, you want to be thinking about what's the next step ahead. What's the next step?
Mm-hmm.
So again, hopefully that wasn't anything other than like, oh crap, you know, you already know you want to follow up, but it's just like,
yeah,
almost thinking about that or having something on the ready that you could use, even if it was like, hey, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, it's still not that far away. Like, but even just, okay, you know what? Would it be cool to have like a simple survey? And I mean, literally it could be even a simple question like, hey, what do you like? I mean, I really love that that beverage cart. Like the tea was amazing. The apple cider was amazing. I'm like, holy cow. I want to go to another event with what she had there. That was incredible. But it's like, hey, what did you think about it? You know?
Mm-hmm.
And even having something as simple as like, thank you for coming. We appreciate you. Thanks for being a customer.
Yeah.
And like, that's it. But just having that on the ready, so you know, because now it's not oh crap after the fact that there's already every other thing. I mean, because there was already so many other things you had to get prepared for.
That was kind of the thing. Like we're prepared to email, everything's ready, but the way that the data was collected initially, and then like when people came, we had a lot of people show up that didn't RSVP. And so I didn't have their data until the day of when they filled out the little, you know, like the sign-in sheet.
Yep.
So I'm like, well, now I got to go enter all that information in, create a new list. You know, it's like this whole thing.
Well, here's the one thing though that I will say, and again, I appreciate you mentioning this, and I'm sure everyone else can kind of relate in some way, shape, or form here on this call, is that is you applying. Right? Like that's the apply step. Now you need to refine. So how can you on the next event, whatever you're going to do, how can you even have like an iPad with an easy way for them to sign up? So now all of a sudden, all of that information goes into a spreadsheet or even goes right into your CRM where they literally can have like, this is something that I do on my art site. Like when people have an opportunity to sign up, when they contribute to a canvas, they contribute to the canvas and then they instantly get the connected to they're basically now onto a list of a contributor, right? And the information that I need is in the CRM that I can then follow up with them on. So that could even be something as simple as something on your website. They could be integrated into Constant Contact or whatever CRM you end up. But again, this is like what's great about it is when you do these exercises, you learn crap. Now I've got like that's how I started out with the paint with the artist class.
Yeah.
Right. I was like, oh my gosh, I was doing a terrible job of sending emails out to everyone because I was like, I didn't have that next step thought of. Right. And again, one thing that I'll share with everyone is like, I'm happy to like lift the hood and show like, this is not all perfect. Like, this isn't like I mean, at the same time, like I'm working on a lot of things, but it's like I'm learning as I go and I'm refining as I'm regularly doing that. And after I refine so much, then I'll automate it. And then I'll really be able to use the CRM to the maximum capacity.
Yeah, I think just, obviously, yeah, exactly that. Like repetition, we'll get better at it. And, it's my first time ever doing it. And I felt like pretty accomplished that I even just got my list together and got a like a email out in general to like 400 or 500 people,
Like, no.
Oh, wow, this is huge.
It is a big deal, and it takes all of that, and that's all the like, I'm going to even say it, the busy work, right?
Yeah.
Like, doing the spreadsheet is not the sexy part. Like, oh, you want to see like
No.
demos. That's why those demos look so amazing, because all of that stuff has already been figured out. But most people don't know what they need for it to do in order for it to do what they want it to do.
Right. Well, the other thing too, that in my experience, like doing spreadsheets and, lists and data externally, it allows you some autonomy in case, you switch platforms or, maybe they make a, to export your list, they want to have, charge a premium or something like that. Like those changes can happen at any time. And we've seen them happen time and time again with like website plugins and things like that. So then they basically hold data hostage. And I think if you're maintaining it outside of the CRM, then you really don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's yours.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, all great questions. I mean, again, this is really, again, kind of an experiment here. I'd like to do this on the first Thursday of every month is what I'm thinking about doing. So I'm happy to do this again. Any feedback, any thoughts, any things that you would like to learn more about or whatever, or again, if anyone wants to hop on a call and kind of speak specifically directly about what they're doing, more than happy to do that. So any other last takeaways? One thing I always love is as I wrap up client calls is I always ask about takeaway. What's a big takeaway? And I know Dave, you already kind of started sharing, so thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Because when we read a headline in the news, the headline says it all. Then you read all the details and you kind of get more of the context. Well, we kind of did it in reverse, right? We've got all the context now. What's the headline that you could walk away with? Because at the end of the day, you just invested almost an hour of your time. So how can you make this hour worth your time moving forward? And what is that next step? This doesn't have to be like you turn on a CRM tomorrow. Can it be like you take the column or you add a column in your spreadsheet right now that says persona and you start going through as you're doing your day-to-day, right? You add in a persona. Okay, yeah, I just talked to Tim. Here, this is a Tim. This is a Tim. This is a Tim, right? And just start to slowly work that spreadsheet in. I'm not saying you gotta go off into the woods and take a 2 or 3 days and just organize your CRM or organize your spreadsheet, because that's unrealistic at times, right? So anyhow, that's another piece there. So any other takeaways here before we wrap up?
No, I think that is my takeaway, is that I know we've talked a little bit, Mark, about like CRMs, and like I've definitely looked at HubSpot a few times. I've been like, do I pull the trigger? Is it time? But like I adding that column or two in the spreadsheet to really identify people as like relationships it's so funny. That is the takeaway I had from my trip to Los Angeles. Was I was meeting with other content creators and influencers in my space, and somebody that I was very excited to talk to, over coffee, he was like, look, he's like, the biggest thing I can tell you is that you're doing this in a way that is very networky, and maybe that's a New York aesthetic, but like what you're really doing is building relationships with people. And it, like, in the moment blew my mind, but to hear it echoed here is like, oh, well, I guess that's the theme. So that's my takeaway.
Yeah. And, if there's one thing about it, and I think virtually every single one of you guys that are here, I know, Stephen, it's a newer connection here. At the same time, I think every one of you that knows this, like, I genuinely want to serve people that I talk to whenever I talk to them, and whatever it is that I could provide at the time, I want to do, right? And my thinking inside of this, and I really feel like if you were to pin me up against the wall or whatever, and if it was like really down to it, like genuinely, I'm so happy that we could spend this time together and I could share this with you. There is not a hook here, right? Like, this is about developing a relationship. You know, Dave, like you and I met how many years ago? I mean, it was like 6 or 7 years ago. And like, this is to me what it's about. And, you know, if there's an opportunity for us to work together, fantastic. I would love that. I would welcome it because I appreciate all of you. And that's not what this is, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still tell the story, Mark, of how we met.
Oh, that's awesome.
I still have the book.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And that's really, that's at the heart of what I'm offering here, because CRMs could be very not polarizing, that's not the right word, but it's almost like black or white, right? And this is not about that. Like, what everything that I've been talking about is about persona and understanding their challenges, characteristics, and goals, right? You want to understand, like, can you serve them or not? Right? Because it's, if you're at a different stage, then that's not like, if you're a startup, I'm not like, I've tried that in the past, and it's like, I'm not going to be able to serve them like someone else who specializes in working with startups, you know? So that's just kind of the idea of like how to develop this. So yeah, this is really about relationships. So I genuinely appreciate all of your time. I appreciate all of you guys. So thanks for investing the hour. Cause like I said,
Likewise,
I was like, hey, 30 minutes is cool, but an hour is even better. So
yeah. Well, thank you very much, Mark, for your time. We appreciate it. And, you know, hopefully it affords me some accountability that, you know, give me a little kick in the pants.
Well, I'll see you. Yeah, I'll see you again. So I'll be asking where you're at with it.
Yeah, right. I know you will.
You know what? Actually, you don't have to say this out loud unless you really want to. But like, if for each of you, what's the, like, yes, there's the takeaway, but what's the thing, right? Is it adding that column, right? And at least starting to do some of this persona work. And actually, maybe one of the things that we could even go into, I even, you know, again, next month or whatever, maybe that could be one of the things where I kind of go into like more detail of like, I talk about high level challenges, characteristics, and goals, but maybe I go into it next month of like, here's what a persona could really look like and something along those lines. So yeah, I just invite everyone to walk away after, along with your takeaway. What's the thing that you're going to do and what by when? And give yourself time to do whatever that is. But like, if it's in the next week, like adding in a column and starting to have your spreadsheet open every single time you contact a client. Perfect. Like, that's a step. That's not a, you know, like, yeah, I could keep going on and on and on. Like, going to events is one thing. Being here is one thing. It's then taking that and taking it to the next step. It's the action and it's the uncomfortableness of it all. Like, man, there's so many things to do. All right, great. Well, let's just add in one column. Let's make sure that column's there. But I'll follow up with all of you with some columns you could add. I'll send in that worksheet so you can fill that out. And it's actually a PDF so that you could like fill in details in there or print it out, whatever you want to do. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Guys.
You got it, guys. Appreciate you.
Yep. See you.
Nice work, Mark.
Thanks. All right, let's stop recording.